Welcome to Superhero Stuff You Should Know, or Supervillain Stuff You Should Know, as we can call it for this week, as we tackle the 80th anniversary of Two-Face. This is BenMan89, and with me, as usual, is Drewface.
Drewface. The villain only has to win once. The hero has to win every day.
I should have given you my coin.
So there you go.
And
only once, baby.
And returning to our show is one of our recurring guests. I may be the man who knows too much about Batman, but he's for sure the man who knows too much about Harvey Dent and Two-Face. It's John Hefner from About Faces. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back. This is a really exciting one.
Yes. 2022 is the 80th anniversary year for Two-Face, and we're finally here to talk about the man who never got to play Two-Face, not counting the Lego Batman movie, and that's Billy Dee Williams. And so here we are, the Billy Dee Williams Two-Face, the Unmade Plans is going to be the episode for this week. And we've actually, just to give the audience some behind-the-scenes info, we've been trying to do this episode for a while. And it's not John's fault. It's not Andrew or my fault. The fault, in a way, lies with DC. So I wanted John on the show to talk about this way back in February.
You don't say. DC's had a lot of internal strife.
So, yeah, I wanted to do this.
Newsflash.
I wanted to do this back in February because, February 2022, let's talk about Two-Face. This is perfect. And, everybody among our audience seems to be huge Batman 89 fans. We haven't really had a Two-Face focused episode on Billy Dee Williams as Harvey Dent from Batman 89. And we thought, okay, this is going to be perfect. This is when the Batman 89 comic series will be done, and we'll be able to talk about that arc. And then it got delayed. And the next issue was like many months later, and we were just like, we can't really do this episode without knowing the full story of this comic. And then August was going to be the last issue, and I was like, this is perfect, because August 1942, that's when Detective Comics 66, where Harvey first showed up, when that was published. So that's going to be great. And then a guy named Sam Hamm wanted to be on the show. And I wasn't going to turn him down, so we decided to wait until we got some more insight from the interview with the writer himself. And here we are. So we finally made it. So, John, you've been on our show to talk about the obscure Batman comic strip that had a major arc for Harvey in terms of his origin. You came on to talk about The Long Halloween, also very Two-Face heavy. So for those who don't know, Two-Face is your guy. He's your top character. Is the comparison I made in the beginning about like Batman's my guy, yours is Two-Face, like that wasn't just a joke. Like it actually is true. So could you speak a bit towards what Two-Face means to you as a character?
I don't know, man. That really is one of the hardest questions. Like I remember when I was like 7 years old, I got the Batman 89 breakfast cereal, which I'm sure you might remember.
I don't think I had it, but I heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can still remember how it tasted. It was, the usual terrible cash-in cereal.
And man,
high
just
fructose corn syrup.
Made by a corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it came with a mail away you can get one of 3 issues of the Untold Legend of Batman by Len Wein and Aparo.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like miniature versions, but with better paper quality than the other ones had. I never had a comic before. But before that point, like so many kids, I just knew Batman from the TV show, from the Adam West show. Mm-hmm. And I got this book, and it was issue number 2, of course, and it had the whole Rogues Gallery, and here are all these characters I never knew about because they weren't in the show. And it gave there was a Two-Face origin in it, and I immediately gravitated to it because, like, wait, this isn't just a bad guy. This is a guy who was good, and Batman feels bad about it. Like, that was really interesting to me as a kid. And growing up, I kept noticing him on the animated series, and I started reading comics, and I kept being interested in him, and I couldn't really nail down why for years and years. But I think what really clicked for me was reading DeMatteis's Crime and Punishment one shot, and reading Eye of the Beholder by Andrew Helfer and Chris Sprouse, and reading the original Golden Age stuff too, because I was trying to collect the classic, the archives collections back then, and I just found him just so interesting and complex at how he mirrored Batman. Like I was saying before we started recording, so much of what everyone loves about Batman, I saw in Two-Face. And I found his tragedy added a little twist to that I really found appealing. And I also love the way he always was so close to redemption, and
Hmm.
and then it always kind of got ignored, or sometimes it got ignored, sometimes it got retconned, but most times they just kind of went, he's just a villain again. And
Yeah.
that sort of gave me a I don't know, it's like something to chase after, to keep seeing, will they actually do it this time? Will they do it this time? It's it's like a will they, won't they, but for, I don't know, pain
And redemption. Yeah.
and redemption. And so, and I keep, I've gone through so many other phases of being interested in other characters, and I get the hyperfixations, and to get hyper focused, super obsessed, and then they come and go, and then some stay with me more or less, and yet here I am, still just crazy about Two-Face, still interested in
Hmm.
these stories because he keeps evolving. The stories keep changing, even when they don't change, even when they go back to the status quo, and I keep, yeah, I just think he's just, I just holding up a potato. I just think he's neat.
Right.
And
Oh
That's awesome,
man!
though.
And you let's say it on air. You like Two-Face more than Batman, correct?
yes, I do. And like I said, the reason why is because what so many people do with Two-Face is something that really appeals to me. I mean, not to get just to get personal for a second. I've seen a lot of people who write about Batman as Batman as a character who they see has gotten them through trauma, personal abuse, horrible situations. People have looked at Batman as an inspiring figure. Whereas I like those stories I mentioned from Two-Face. I come from a background of alcoholic abuse, my father, and for me, I saw myself in that in a way no other story I've seen has captured that particular that effect. And what that back then was really cathartic to me, and I haven't really forgotten that, because like I said, I haven't found anything else that has captured it just that beautifully, and that with that much truth, at least that I recognized.
Do you like how tragic he is? Two-Face seems like he's more tragic than the other ones because
I
he's closer to redemption, just so close to redemption all the time, right? Closer than the other villains, probably, wouldn't you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah, and the thing is, I I know a lot of people would say the appeal is the Sisyphusian pushing the rock up the hill and then it goes back down again. They'd say that's the appeal. As I'm getting older, I'm like, can he just be happy? I'm he could still be Two-Face. He
Hmm.
could be an unreliable anti-hero, anti-villain, wild card character. But like, I'd be happy with the Rock staying up there at least for a little while.
Hmm.
Which is why this year has been really interesting, because this has been a weird, wacky year for Two-Face stories, with Batman '89 being one of the highest ones, but also what's happening in canon. It's just it's
Yes.
there's some nutty stuff happening right now.
Hmm.
Wouldn't you say it might be off character though if he was happy more than half of the time?
Oh, I'm sure he'll still suffer some
He'll find a
way.
way. Yeah, he'll find a way to inflict pain.
Life life kicks him down the stairs constantly.
Yeah.
It'll keep doing it. He could just be maybe a little bit more mentally healthy, and a little bit more at peace with some of his trauma, and then he can just get the crap kicked out of him all the time.
Yeah, it's like with Batman, he can still be in love. He can still be in a relationship with Catwoman. He can still have healthy relationships with his sons, with Robin, but he doesn't
Exactly.
necessarily need to be so healthy that he doesn't even need to dress up in a bat suit and fight crime, because otherwise you have no comic.
Exactly. Like I firmly believe Batman can be happier and more functional and have relationships and still be the goddamn Batman.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I think so. I think so too.
We,
With we're kind of now talking about just Two-Face. It's sort of a Two-Face focused episode, and to me, it was interesting in thinking about this because he's one of the top Batman villains. However, with like in live action adaptations, we've had some fantastic Jokers, Catwoman, Penguin, Riddlers, like great variations among great actors. And if we were to rank them, they'd mostly be in like S and A tier, more or less. And then we get to Two-Face, and that's just a character who I think has really gotten the short end of the stick in live action in comparison.
Yeah,
There's just not, like, if I were to let's pull up who we've seen so far is, Tommy Lee Jones in Batman Forever. Again, fan of the film. I have in my usual place, the poster for Batman Forever behind us, but it's notoriously trashed because of just how little of the complexity of the character is there. That movie's main villain is Jim Carrey's Riddler. Two-Face is there because he fits the whole dual identity thing, but I'm at a point where, like, in order for me to enjoy this, I just pretend he's not the Harvey Dent Two-Face. He's one of the imposter Two-Faces in the comics who aren't as complex, whether that's
sure.
Wilkins, Paul Sloan, George. My personal choice to retcon forever is that he's Harvey Apollo from the comic strip, where Harvey was a, quote, ham actor who cackles a lot, just like Tommy Lee Jones in this movie.
Yeah.
And he dies at the end, just like Tommy Lee Jones in this movie. So we had a whole episode about it in the $5 Patreon. But he gets the short end of the stick with that. And then Aaron Eckhart in The Dark Knight, to sum it up, great representation for District Attorney Harvey Dent. Poor representation of Two-Face, in my opinion. Again,
Totally agreed.
Great Harvey. Heard several people say that up until the actual explosion and scarring, he seems like he's a bigger hero than Batman in this movie. And yet, it was clear that the Nolans don't have interest in Two-Face. They have interest in Harvey Dent and what he represents in the themes. But I don't know if you guys have heard this one, but I distinctly remember listening to a podcast interview of Jonathan Nolan around The Dark Knight, and they asked, like, well, why'd you kill off Two-Face? And he was just like, well, we thought that's all we needed to do with him. What, we were going to have him rob the Second National Bank on a Tuesday or something? And I'm like, well, clearly, if your main exposure to Two-Face is fucking Batman Forever, then if that's all that you thought that was going to happen, then I guess I can see why you killed him off. But that's really not, like, there could have been so many different things. I know a lot of people in 2008 were talking to me, and they're just like, so you don't think Two-Face is actually dead, right? He's going to be the villain of the third movie. And as we saw, that did not happen. So,
I still held out hope. But by the way, I never heard that Nolan story, and you aged me 10 years. Thank you very much. I remember at the time, though. They were totally talking about doing, like, for the next two movies. The first movie would end with his scarring, and the next movie would be the rise of Two-Face. And I thought that was a great idea because you had the Joker, but then the whole third movie would be Two-Face. Mm-hmm. And then we got Bane.
Yes, we did.
Did you feel like as Two-Face he got a short shrift because he just didn't have much to do? He didn't really do a whole lot.
He stopped being. He really stopped being a character and became a plot device.
I see.
I think that's a good way to put it, because suddenly it's like, okay, I'm not going to go after the guy who actually blew off half my face. I'm going to go after Gordon's kid. I'm going to try to kill this child. I'm like, well, wait a minute.
Right. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
I remember this is going to be controversial because I remember, everyone loved the Nurse Joker scene. And trust me, I loved Heath as Nurse Joker in that scene.
Oh, yeah.
But when people are like, oh, the Joker's a master manipulator, weaving these lies and half-truths. And I'm thinking, if I were Harvey in that position, in that situation with the guy who blew up Rachel, and I'm in severe pain from returning down painkillers, I would just be not able to listen to anything, just a rabid dog the whole time. I mean, at that point, he shouldn't have been listening to anything. He shouldn't have been alive. But
there is a YouTube edit where Harvey flips the coin and he looks up at Ledger, and then you just hear a gunshot and then it says directed by Christopher Nolan.
The end.
The alternate ending.
Huzzah!
Yeah.
But yeah, I always thought, like, is this how he's just gonna listen to Joker and that's how he becomes Two-Face? But again, like, great Harvey and stuff. It's just clear that the actual Two-Face as a criminal, as a villain, they were not interested in that. And I maintain the best movie portrayal for Two-Face is neither of these gentlemen. It's William Shatner in Batman vs. Two-Face, the animated movie. Check that one out with Adam West in his final Batman performance. Like, that is a Two-Face movie, as we've talked about before.
Absolutely.
So, in general, this character, unfortunately, has gotten a short end of the stick, even though he is one of the most well-known Batman villains. And to sort of epitomize that is the actor who got the short end of the stick, Billy Dee Williams, as we're going to talk about for this episode.
Before we get into this, I just want to say, when we first started doing this podcast, Ben, and you told me that there was no Batman 89 Two-Face, that's correct, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not
Like,
89, not 89,
well-
66.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
I thought for a second, I was like, I could not believe that, because to me, he is like S tier, and all the S tiers were pretty much in
66.
66, right? And I always group them together, and I just couldn't believe that, because he has such a presence that all the other ones have, and the other ones have that presence because they were on 66, but he has the presence even though he wasn't even on the fucking show. He was almost on it, right? Wasn't there a script that you say that?
Yeah. As we went over the different takes, some were better than others, but yeah, the Harlan Ellison one was the closest to the actual script, and it would have been interesting from a 66 lens.
I just think that says something about Two-Face, to have that kind of presence even without being on that iconic show.
I totally would have accepted the totally wacky script where he was a fashion designer or something. I know,
got
I'm serious.
robots.
I'm serious. It was so out there.
Mm-hmm.
It would have. I mean, it would have changed the character forever. Or I would have had like the Bronze Age people like Denny O'Neil, who hated the Batman 66 show and its reputation, lean even harder into the comic roots. But I would have taken it.
Maybe.
It was bonkers. It was fun. But I mean, Harlan's. I stand by. When thinking about my favorite Two-Face stories, I kind of want to include Harlan's 2-page treatment, because he lays out the steps of a perfect Two-Face story and what makes him a great character and what his dynamic with Batman is and how it's powerful. And just these 2 pages of just a cranked out treatment he wrote.
Because it's a treatment for the 66 one, you're saying.
Yeah, he just an outline, because Harlan Ellison was an old fanboy who remembered this. Who actually remembered these stories.
That's cool.
Yeah. He's definitely drawing off of Detective Comics 66 on that one and the original Two-Face trilogy and stuff. So he was a big fanboy, and so was Sam Hamm, clearly, in this, because Harvey's not in any of the previous attempts of to make a Batman script in the 70s and 80s when Michael Uslan was trying to get this off the ground. There's no Harvey Dent in the Tom Mankiewicz script, the Burton Hickson treatment, the Steve Englehart treatments. He was untouched by Bob Kane's masterpiece, The Return of Batman, that we went over. And it's really Hamm who is just like, let me put Harvey Dent in here, and it's kind of innovative because there's no Batman Year One at this point when Hamm takes over the script stuff. Like, we don't see the panels of Harvey working with Batman in the early days of Year One. Long Halloween is many, many years away too, where that's even more popularized among the people outside of the even regular comic circles. The main thing that showed that Harvey and Batman were allies was simply the fact that Harvey and Batman worked together against Maroni in Detective Comics 66, and then just a few panels later, acid hits the face. So
my face.
It wasn't a lot. Yeah. But Sam Hamm's a big Two-Face fan. He confirmed that in our interview with him. He pretty much adapted elements of the original Two-Face story into his origin for Jack Nicholson's Joker, namely the idea of someone who is initially vain about his appearance and ends up getting disfigured, sort of creating kind of an irony, a psychological effect in addition to a physical one. And I actually like that better for Joker than for Two-Face, because we don't really see... It doesn't seem that deep for Harvey to be just like, I was really vain DA and now I'm scarred. Like, that just seems a little bit...
Going back in the original stories,
Yeah.
I feel like the vanity is something that some fans kind of put on him, because like he's called Apollo, he's just like, hi, cameras, but he's more worried about being ostracized from society and from his fiance than he is about his looks.
That's a good point.
And I found that to be, the more I read, I keep going back to the originals as a really damn solid story, even past Golden Age standards. And I think about just the outcast aspect and what that meant back in 1942 as well.
That's true too. I mean, you really understand that it's 1942 when literally he can't get an operation because the doctor who can operate on him is in Auschwitz, and you're like, oh yeah, this is the 40s.
Seriously.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, and people, of course, were reading. I mean, they were kids of the generation that remembered the soldiers coming home from the First World War too.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't even think about that. Like, in terms of the soldiers coming back, and they're also have been disfigured due to their time in the war.
I've been hearing, but not able to find accounts of some of the ostracization they felt and how it broke up some families too. And of course, on top of that, you got the trauma and the complete lack of decent mental health care back then, or any understanding of that sort of thing. And it's very, I find it really interesting to consider what it would have meant for him at that point to have been scarred.
We're in a very different point now, so that when reading back, I can see how, like, oh, he just seems more vain than usual compared to, like, 1940s, where it's just like, oh, you're fucked, dude, when it comes to your face. So, yeah, no, I hadn't even thought about that, the connection to, like, wartime at that time.
Yeah.
But that's a great point. Hamm is also the first, it seems, to create the instance of Harvey Dent and Bruce Wayne as friends, something that got lost in the film, and it was in the script written before Bill Messner-Loebs decided to do something similar in his comic strip that we went over with John last year. In itself, likely inspiring the friendship in the Batman animated series, as well as the Telltale games. Sadly, not in the movies. There's nothing to really contradict the fact that Harvey could be friends with Bruce in '89, given the fact that he is at the party at the house. It's just never have a scene together. But it does seem that Hamm was playing with that idea. It didn't get into the movie, but Bill Messner-Loebs ended up having a similar idea for that comic strip. You can check out our episode with John on that, the original Batman '89 sequel, along with our interview with Bill himself, where he went a little bit into that choice. But I thought it was interesting in our interview with Sam Hamm, and I'm curious what your reaction to this too was, John, when you saw the interview. But Sam said that he was always tripped out that the party in Wayne Manor in '89 is not the campaign party for Harvey Dent like he originally wrote. It's for the anniversary celebration. And I always thought that when he said that, I'm like, oh, that is kind of true. That is kind of funny and stuff. Even though it makes sense in the movie where he's already been elected DA, so why would he need a campaign thing? But
yeah, sure.
It still would have had a bit of a more subtle hint to the friendship, as opposed to the movie. You could also just read it that Bruce Wayne's placard is in that opening speech thing just because he's Bruce Wayne, not necessarily because he's personal friends with him. Harvey's role in Hamm's script wasn't necessarily bigger than the movie, but it did feel more significant to the story. There's a scene in which Harvey Dent pushes, the rest of the city officials to pay the Joker and make a deal with him so that they can save lives and have him stop attacking the city. Obviously, that doesn't work out, but Harvey couldn't have really been blamed for that. But the biggest deleted scene is one I've brought up before, where Bruce tries to convince Harvey to raid Ace Chemicals or to stop the anniversary celebration. Harvey questions how Bruce even knows that Joker's at Ace Chemicals and working from there, and says, quote, "I'm just a DA. I don't have access to all your expert sources," which seems to imply that Dent knows that Bruce is Batman. And when we asked Sam Hamm that, he confirmed for us that it's one of those lines that's supposed to make the audience think, but wasn't necessarily, I don't know how much he was planning to go through that. In the Batman '89 comic, clearly, Harvey does not know until way after he's Two-Face that Bruce is Batman. But I thought that's always an interesting scene that jumped out at me.
Totally
and stuff.
was. I know, yeah. I remember reading that script myself years ago and just being just giddy at that scene. just giddy. I loved it. And I was just, what we could have had, man. What we could have had.
Especially if you envision, them actually shooting that making it to the final script. They're at Pinewood. It's Keaton and Billy Dee Williams actually having a scene together and stuff. And Billy Dee kind of doing that scene, hinting that, he sort of knows. If they keep that in, you have audiences kind of expecting, to put them in '89 terms, it was like, what, Lando knows Bruce is Batman? We got to get more on this. They'd want to see more of that, what's going on there. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that I totally agree with everything, and I thought really Hamm's interview was so fascinating for so many damn reasons. But of course, everything you brought up here specifically, because I'm trying to think about one of the things being hyper focused on this single character that I am. I struggled to maintain objectivity, and objectively. I suppose it does make more plot sense to keep the focus for the fundraiser on the whole plot point of the parade.
The anniversary, yeah. Sure.
Because it takes away from... Because with Harvey being a Crusader going after Grisham, well, that subplot just kind of only serves for the Grisham subplot, which goes away once Grisham's dead. And then
it dies pretty quickly.
Whereas the fundraiser goes all the way to the end. So I get that. But on the other hand, grr.
Of course, you would want more Harvey.
Cater to my wishes.
Clearly. Let's talk then about the casting, as it's not indicated in Sam Hamm's script that Harvey Dent is black, and it seems like a little bit more common now in 2022 for there to do the whole race swap to be more inclusive.
Yeah.
But this is 1989, and the main time I can think of where there was something like this happening was Batman 66 with Eartha Kitt as Catwoman, which of course carries over now into like Zoe Kravitz and Asana Lathan and the Harley Quinn show. And I thought, okay, what can I find on this? And strangely, I can't find anything about Harvey Dent's casting. There are rumors online of different actors who were considered, like Don Johnson apparently, but I don't buy a lot of that, because I really don't buy the fact that they put a lot of thought into Harvey Dent, unfortunately, because this is 1989 we're talking about. This is not the era of the MCU where they cast you in the first movie, the hint that maybe you'll be, in costume in the second movie. Or in War Machine's case, they cast you in the first movie and then they hint you're going to be in the costume, but then they replace you and that guy's in the costume. But still, like, I feel like Sam Hamm's the main one who's behind the scenes of this show, who knows Harvey Dent's going to be a Batman villain. And then he tells Tim Burton, who's like, oh, that's cool. And then Tim Burton tells Billy Dee, and then that's pretty much it. Like, I don't think there's a Warner Bros. Exec being like, sequel potential. Orlando's the villain of the next movie. Like, I don't think anybody knew that.
Well, like Hamm was saying, they weren't really expecting it to be a blockbuster.
That too.
But and also Harvey wasn't known by a generation of people who the mass audiences. So he was a blank slate for most people. Hell, he was a blank slate for a lot of comic fans too. He was pretty much just known by the hardcore Batman fans at that time. But he was a blank slate. They could have cast pretty much anybody, and no one would have pointed out or complained. Everyone's so focused on the miscasting, air quotes if you're listening, of Keaton and Jack's sheer star power. So yeah, they could have done anything they wanted with him, and it's interesting that what they went with was Billy Dee Williams, and that was super interesting, and obviously it is still interesting because that's what we're talking about.
Right.
General public at the time did not know who Two-Face was probably either, right? Because he was not in the 66 show.
Exactly.
No.
So like there might be like if the average theater in Batman in 89 watching this movie, there might be like two people in the audience who are just like, Harvey Dent, and then everyone else is just like, cool, it's Billy Dee Williams, he's in this movie.
It's like the nerds who in watching Batman Forever, you'd hear a titter of one or two people when they'd mention Metropolis.
Oh yeah.
And now there'd be a couple people going, I know what that is.
I think now people who might be watching 89 for the first time, let's say that they've seen the Christian Bale movies and now are watching, going back to watch the older ones, they're going to have more reaction now than people did in 89, because they're just like, oh wait, Harvey Dent, like that's in the Dark Knight movies. There was a Harvey Dent in this one too. That's cool. Like that's the reaction that we get. But in 89, there was probably more reacting to Billy Dee Williams, if anybody, in terms of like, I know that guy, but not necessarily the character he played.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. Again, he's a very early like Easter egg hint at the sequel type role, even though he didn't actually get to play the role in the sequel. Billy Dee is on record saying he only had a one-picture deal for this. Like he did not sign a multi-picture deal, which makes sense because they did, like John said, and as Sam Hamm mentioned, they didn't know that this was going to be a hit.
Yeah.
This was a risk for them. It was not guaranteed there was going to be a Batman 2, which is insane these days when there's like a million different Batmen on screen right now. But it wasn't guaranteed at all, and I think there was just kind of general hope that like maybe at some point we'll bring this character in, and I think Billy Dee was hoping for that. When he got the part, he knew at some point that Two-Face could be on the table, but there's all these rumors and talks about like his contract getting bought out and stuff, and he's on record being like, no, I fulfilled the contract. It was just that one movie for 3 minutes of screen time. That's it.
And Schumacher also saying that he just couldn't visualize Billy Dee Williams as a villain. He saw him as a lover, as a hero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I got that quote too. In terms of seeing him as like, I saw him as a hero, as Clark Gable type of thing, and so he just never really considered Billy Dee for that. And I think in the lens of 2022, people are just like, wait, so he replaced a black man with a white man? That's racist. But I'm just like, well, if you look at the lens of 1995, Schumacher, kind of having an idea for a Batman villain for his friend, Tommy Lee Jones, who he just worked with on The Client and stuff. And again, even now, today, Harvey Dent is still a white man in the comics. So, like, it's not really that much of a stretch for him to consider an actor whom he already worked with for a role that maybe a lot of people, especially in 1995, didn't even remember was played by Billy Dee Williams in 1989.
Yeah.
So Schumacher was kind of a reboot anyway, right? I mean,
yeah, like
not
even
to
Michael
defend
Uslan,
that casting too much, but
yeah,
But
even Michael Uslan has said that he's never really seen the Burton and Schumacher movies as part of the same like universe or continuation off each other.
I think it's easy to say that there's a Schumacher verse, right? That's just different.
Yeah, at this point, and I think it became solidified once this came out. Once the comic came out, it's called Batman '89. It's got Billy Dee Williams as Two-Face. It's got a different Robin. Like we were holding our copies up in front of the camera.
Oh man, I don't have it. I here, Karate Kid. This is what we got. Here.
Nice, Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai, baby.
Cobra Kai never dies. But, I mean, at the time in the '90s, it was originally meant to be a continuation. In some ways, it's just, again, I just don't think people were just not as into continuity of different movies as before. Like we had The Bachelors on for our podcast, and not once did they mention like we wanted to honor Billy Dee Williams in this role. Man, I don't think they even remembered Billy Dee Williams was in that role when they wrote it in the first place. Because again, it's a different time. We don't have fan wikis in 1990s saying like, oh yeah, Harvey Dent was in this movie. This just didn't happen.
If people noticed him at all, it was because he was Billy Dee goddamn Williams.
Exactly.
They would have noticed him from, of course, Star Wars, but he was, famous for other things. Famous for his career, especially in the '70s, and Brian's Song and Mahogany, and then of course
like Colt 45 commercials or something.
And the famous, quotable, rather sketchy Colt 45 commercials. Yes.
Only reason I know about that is watching a lot of Kevin Smith over the years, man. Like
he keeps talking about that.
They bring that up, dude, because that's stuck in people's minds. It's a little bit before my time, but I'm aware.
Well, it was an effective ad campaign then.
Yeah,
yes,
definitely.
Clearly. Yeah.
Definitely.
I literally, when I was trying to do a deep dive on Billy Dee Williams stuff, because I was so excited, waiting for the next issue of Batman '89, I went, I need to watch Billy Dee Williams stuff and get into it. I literally tried to find Cold 45 and could not.
Has it just been taken off YouTube?
Well, no. I mean, no. The ads are there. I meant to actually drink it too.
Oh,
it's just,
get
the full experience.
You wanted to you were gonna buy it. You should. If you just had that while you're reading a Two-Face comic, like, oh my god, this is the life right here.
One of the most recent issues of Detective Comics, he was seen drinking a Bombay Dry. And I was intrigued by that because Bombay Dry is the gin that's, a step beneath the famous Bombay Sapphire. So I went, I am the highly suggestible type. I will try that. And I had one when the next issue came out.
Wait, so what drink do you think Two-Face, or do you know Two-Face drinks? What is he like?
Oh man, if you're asking this sort of thing, honestly, it's hard to say. Because I still, like I said, I love the backstory of his father being an alcoholic.
Oh, right. Okay.
And every so often we see stories with Two-Face drinking. And, when I was younger and I tried rebelling again, I tried being, a straight edge Captain Buzzkill, judging everyone for having a good time. I didn't want Two-Face drinking. I didn't like that either. But I've loosened up since then, obviously. And because I had a Bombay Dry. And, don't worry, I'm still very uptight in other ways. Don't worry.
Oh, good.
And I don't know. I see of course, Aaron Eckhart taking a shot. I think about that, and I see other stories where he's drinking, and I wish more stories would try to grapple with that. But again, this is my personal thing of wishing they would draw from that kind of backstory more.
That's true, because not all of them have that.
Very few.
Like, is he a whiskey guy? Is he a vodka guy? It's a...
I like to imagine that we could have Two-Face be the hard liquor type, the burning, the scotches, maybe the gin, the tequilas, and Harvey drinks girly drinks. Like he'll get the daiquiri with the big umbrellas.
Right. Uh-huh. That's cool. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
It'd be really stupid if that happened in the story, but I'd still laugh. I'd go, fine, I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a good idea. It would amuse me.
I forgot. Does Tommy Lee Jones have two different drinks?
He sure does, and I wish I knew what they were. But I thought for sure. Yeah, he's just sipping them like a boss who just does not care that Batman just stole his thunder with his awesome entrance.
Right.
He's got two drinks and sipping them both. Yeah. Showmanship.
So, yeah, no, that is a great point about the alcoholism with Harvey and Harvey's father. But as we said, like that's not with every backstory. It turned out not to be part of Billy Dee Williams' Harvey backstory, and we go by the comic,
which is very interesting if we get into that, because I was so interested in how he subverted that and changed that.
No, for sure. But back to Billy Dee, I think the only thing I could find about his casting was Tim Burton in the Batman '89 commentary, and I don't know if you've heard about this one, John, or heard it yourself, but. He says, quote, in the commentary, Burton says, quote, "I love the idea of somebody like him because then you could do a black-white thing. Again, the duality thing, which is so crucial to the Batman material. This implied to me partially because, Burton can be very rambly and stuff and not really the most verbose about his ideas. But, like, if we're going back to the original, quote, I love the idea of somebody like him because then you could do, like, a black and white thing. Does he mean, like... literally can do a black and white thing? Does it mean that like when Harvey gets scarred as Two-Face, the other side is white?
Yeah,
like
Tim,
what could that? I don't know.
I don't know, Tim. Well,
that was a Star Trek episode anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Frank Gorshin
sure.
one, yeah.
I mean, look, Hamm already made it pretty clear that Tim was more of a vibes guy.
Yeah.
He's good at atmosphere.
So it sounds like you're not a fan of this idea, John.
No, I mean, look. One thing that made Batman '89 this book so
Peanut has an opinion.
Good. Oh, hey, I'm surprised my cat hasn't made an appearance yet. We'll give it time. But what made the comic so interesting is just how it really embraced him being black, and did something so interesting with it that wasn't a gimmick. It was so rooted in character and the world building and the city.
Code switching, that kind of thing,
that aspect. Yeah, I know you like that a lot too, Andrew.
Yeah, exactly. That man, yeah, it's perfect. That's the kind of thing that's perfect. At least from my perspective,
Yeah. Obviously, you and I, we I mean, we are
too,
limited.
Everybody on this show right now.
Yeah.
Which is also a reason. It's also a reason why I have been and will be hesitant about going too far into reading too much into things, because I would love to have. If this were a movie, there would be so many think pieces. There would be think pieces about it. People would be analyzing the complexity. I believe they would be analyzing the complexity of Harvey's character, his motivation, and how his motivation changed even before he became Two-Face, and his methods, his behaviors, his whole backstory. I think is just so rich for someone better than me to discuss it, better suited than me to discuss it. But because it's a comic, it just sort of I didn't really see much in the way of really good commentary about as deep into that as I really wanted to see.
Right. It's just just a few reviews out there, and some asshole doing the occasional video essay on Easter eggs and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
what kind of loser?
Do
that.
Some jackass on the internet.
Yeah, some jackass on the internet. That's it. Oh wait, that's me. Billy Dee.
J'accuse.
Billy Dee has a few sound bites as well about his approach to the role, saying that he envisioned his Harvey to be similar to politician Adam Clayton Powell, which is interesting. Describing him as kind of a playboy and flamboyant character, and sort of somewhat based his performance off of him. So I thought that was an interesting tidbit as well. It kind of ties into what ends up happening in the Batman '89 comic. And in terms of his role in the movie, again, like it's a very small role. It's like bigger than what you would say call a cameo, but not so big that you would really call it much of a supporting role. He's already been elected DA, so it's kind of implied to be set after November election. He announces he's going to take down Grissom. Obviously, that doesn't happen because Joker takes care of that. Mainly seen in scenes with the mayor and discussing the celebration, trying to keep the festival going despite Joker's threats. And then at the end, he reads Batman's letter about, giving people the signal. So, a big question comes up sometimes, and this is one that you've tackled sort of offline with me, John, in our discussions, but sometimes the question comes up, well, we've seen Billy Dee Williams as Harvey Dent, but could he have been a good Two-Face, though? Like, he's mostly known among fans as Lando Calrissian in Star Wars, and that's not necessarily an audition to play a Batman villain and stuff. Like, yeah, he's working with the Empire, but he's not like an out-and-out, Batman villain material and that. And it's not really a question that I had thought that much about until that was brought up, and then you contacted me, John, with just like, hey, you've been looking through Billy Dee Williams' filmography, and you recommended a few movies that show off his range that kind of could show that he was capable of playing Two-Face. So I thought we could dive a little bit into that because I saw two of the movies you recommended. The first one being The Final Come Down, a very young Billy Dee Williams, as we see here. There was no stash at this time. This is how early it is. This is a very heavy film on race relations. He plays an extremely angry man, an activist for black people in his community, and it's because, it's definitely a different Billy Dee Williams than what most of us have seen in Star Wars, where he's just a very smooth, calm, I'm Lando Calrissian, very much he's got most of his shit under control. But in The Final Come Down, he's very much the, young, hot-headed character and stuff. It's really interesting to see.
Ferocious performance, fantastic performance. And
yeah,
really,
for sure.
It was a real gem. I'm really glad I discovered that, and I'd love it. And I've talked it up to a few of my friends. I'm surprised it's not more well known.
Yeah, no, it's one where I'm just like, how have I not heard of this movie when I saw it? I was just, it's especially given we know Billy Dee Williams, but he was still a known commodity before Empire Strikes Back. So it's it's kind of weird now that in 2022 most of us just know him as, Lando. But he had a whole career before he even stepped foot onto the whole Star Wars space. So
it's called The Come Down.
Yeah, the Final Come Down.
The Final Come Down. In what year? Looks like mid-70s maybe.
Yeah, 72 or no? Actually, it was 70. It was 71, I think. Thereabouts.
1972 is what I found.
72. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So 1972 for that one, and then the other one we've pulled up is Mahogany, in which he plays a guy running for office who at one point gets milk thrown on half his face.
Yep.
Kind of foreshadowing.
And snaps. He snaps.
And snaps, of course.
Wow, that's really perfect, honestly.
Yeah. He's so smooth, and he's cool, and he's righteous in that, in that he was just totally a crusader for reform. But then he gets the milk thrown in his face by hecklers, and he snaps just like the animated series Two-Face.
Yeah, that's true. It is like that scene. Yeah. And then there's so this is Mahogany is an extremely weird movie.
Oh, it sure is.
As well, where I'm just this is a nice romance thing. And then Anthony Perkins shows up, mainly known as Norman Bates. And he's not quite he's not really acting like Norman Bates, but he's still very much a villain who wouldn't be out of place in a Psycho movie outside of being Norman Bates. And he has a fight with Billy Dee Williams, and it very much feels like Billy Dee is fighting the Joker at one point. I'm like, this is weird. And this is supposed to be just a romance movie starring Diana Ross.
Is it weird because the plot's hard to follow? It's like a David Lynch kind of thing almost? Or what makes it weird?
There's the tonal shifts. Where it's just this is a nice romance between Diana Ross and Billy Dee Williams. Meanwhile, this guy's crazy.
Some people call it a camp classic, and I'm not sure that is exactly right, but it definitely has elements where it veers into a bizarre territory tone-wise. And Perkins, it was a fantastic actor. I love Perkins, but Billy Williams and Diana Ross were all in 3 separate movies. They were all acting in whole different movies, and then having to interact with each other.
Is that a directing issue, you think, or was that on purpose?
I think it was cocaine. I think it was
mounds of cocaine.
Yeah,
This must have been the 80s, well, 70s also.
It was the follow-up for Diana Ross and Billy Dee Williams and the director to the really successful Billie Holiday biopic Lady Sings the Blues, which was pretty it was I saw that at first and it was very good and very much a by the numbers biopic. It hit the usual the life story notes, but it was way more straightforward as a story. And then this was the follow-up, and it was... I don't think it was as successful. I think people for a while were definitely remembered it. And they certainly remembered Billy Dee Williams being charming and sexy in that. But it has more of a strained reputation for being over the top and weird. And yeah, that's
it. Just
that's
feels like
basically
I'm in a romance, I'm in a thriller. I'm in a romance, I'm in a thriller now. I'm like, wait, what? Like it just goes back and forth so much. And as you said, like all the three leads are in three different movies.
Yeah, it'd be a great movie to watch with friends. You know, to see the reactions as the stuff happens in it. Because it was a trip. It was a
with
trip.
friends and with some Donner Chronic.
Yeah.
So.
Gotta love
also, the fact that he's giving big speeches and has his face like this is basically a very foreshadowing of Batman '89 here, with Brian Walker as opposed to Harvey Dent, complete with the the black and white photo of his face behind him, which I know it's a trope of politicians, but still, yeah. I think it's ironic too. I've told this off the air to you, John, but like a lot of the criticism on the Batman '89 comic is that they made Harvey Dent way too political. And I'm like, compared to what Billy Dee Williams used to play, like he's always like in the 70s, he's playing activists towards like progressing equality for African Americans. Like that's what he was mainly known for before Lando.
The people who badmouthed Batman '89's Harvey Dent would crap their pants if they saw the final comeback.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely crap their pants.
Every scene is about how black people are getting fucked over. Like every scene is about that. Yeah. And stuff. So I'm just like, what we got in Batman '89 is extremely light compared to what Billy Dee used to be in the old days. So, after seeing these movies you recommended, I mainly saw these two. I think there were others that you mentioned to me that Billy Dee has been a part of, but you didn't recommend them as strongly for demonstrating Harvey traits and stuff. But
Sam Hamm brought up one called Hit! Exclamation point.
Yeah,
and
with Richard Pryor.
I was delighted he brought that up because that was great. I love that too. But it's not he didn't get to show off his stuff as much. It was a good intense role. He played a cold-hearted bastard who got shit done, and was manipulative to his own team that he was gathering. It's a good film. It's good and mean, but and that was my first indication of seeing him as a leading man, what he could have done. But then I saw other films and he went even further,
right,
even deeper. Yeah,
I definitely want to check that one out too because I like the general idea of that one. I think I saw a clip where he recruits Richard Pryor's character, which is, it's very much like, it's Harvey Dent recruiting Gus Gorman from Superman 3. But it's because I'm just like, Richard Pryor and Billy Dee Williams collaborated. What that seems like an interesting combination.
Pryor did some great dramatic work in that, and in Lady Sings the Blues. He's heartbreakingly good in Lady Sings the Blues. And it's really cool seeing them play off each other.
I'll have to check that one out too. But this is just shows that Billy Dee had the range when you look at stuff that's not Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, like stuff that is outside of Lando. Because it occurred to me, I'm just like, well, what else have I really seen him in outside of these like genre, like these big fandom movies? Not really much. And it turns out that like this guy's way more talented and has a lot more acting range than what we saw in either of those roles. So it's a testament that they did actually pick the right guy in Batman '89. Ironically, given the fact that they probably didn't put a lot of thought into it.
And and I think even at the time, like that Schumacher quote, I think Billy Dee Williams became trapped in his own a victim of his own success for being known for being suave and being an icon of sexiness and coolness and charming, and that I think made people just overlook or just forget that he actually had more range and could do more stuff. And I think he was also pretty comfortable in the roles he was getting too. So he probably I don't know how much
Paying off the mortgage probably helped.
Yeah, he had bills to pay. He had bills to pay.
So while Billy Dee only got to play the role in live action in 1989, that doesn't mean we're done talking about him. We'll cover the truth behind how they almost brought him back in the sequels after the break.
Just wanted to announce that I have a new podcast called Gaming Gaiden. It's about retro gaming. It's a lot about Japanese to English translation. In this first season, it will be 10 episodes each season. First season will be dropping soon, much sooner than I'm on a Recon. The co-host for this one will be Mike Torres. If you saw the ranking, every Superman video game two-parter we did here on Superhero Stuff You Should Know, you have seen Mike before. So yes, if you like video games, if you've been interested in Japanese ever, we're going to be talking a lot about just Japan in general, Japanese cultural differences as well, and we also are going to have a lot of talk about 90s video game magazines such as Electronic Gaming Monthly, aka EGM, so stay tuned for that. So please be on the lookout for Gaming Gaiden podcast coming soon.
Ellen, in 15 seconds, what is Nice Games Club?
It's our game dev podcast. Steven, help!
Game mechanics, accessibility, art and animation, level design, prototyping.
Everything that goes into making video games. How's that, Mark?
Nice. Listen to Nice Games Club wherever you get your podcasts, or at nicegames.club.
Need some adventure in your life? What Mad Universe is a podcast where two guys delve into the history of sci-fi, fantasy, and horror, and the impact it's had on pop culture.
Everything's the same politically, but we have ray guns.
The actual motive isn't to explore something that's, quote, scientifically possible, or...
But neither is Star Wars, and I know there's arguments about that, but I would definitely consider Star Wars science fiction.
You haven't read Dune!
No, I haven't.
You can never be the Kwisatz Haderach.
What Mad Universe on the HyperX Podcast Network.
What's that? Majestically cresting the horizon as it makes its way into port. Why, it's the brand new HyperX Armada monitors, mounts, and arms. Both the HyperX Armada 25 and 27 gaming monitors come bundled with the sturdy HyperX Armada mount and arm. If you need every split second of advantage when gaming, the Full HD Armada 25 and its 240Hz refresh rate are for you. If you like to soak in the graphical majesty of your gaming, you'll be eyeing the Quad HD Armada 27 with an 165Hz refresh rate. Set sail for HyperX.com or Amazon.com to start making your display armada.
HyperX has refined their lightweight Cloud Stinger headset and now proudly presents the evolved Cloud Stinger 2.
It still keeps the same rotating ear cups, swivel to mute microphone, and comfort, but now adds 2 years of premium DTS headphone X activation.
Get even better in-game audio and a number of other refinements for the low, low price of $50.
Available now at HyperX.com.
Hey, this is Cole Vallis, Tommy Elliott, and Hush from the Fox TV show Gotham, and you're listening to Superhouse. Everything you need to know, Batman.
We're back for part 2 and talking about the unmade plans for Billy Dee Williams' Two-Face. See what I did there?
Oh, man.
Once again, we'll talk about what they had in store for Billy Dee Williams' Two-Face after Batman 89, because clearly there was somebody championing for Two-Face to be part of it, and that person, of course, was Sam Hamm, who figured, it's called Batman 2, guys. So Batman 2, Two-Faced, come on, I already put Harvey Dent in the original movie, but one idea that Hamm recently revealed, I think earlier this year or sometime last year, was a pitch that he brought to producer Mark Canton about the fact that they were toying with the idea of bringing Jack Nicholson back as the Joker. And so Hamm's like, well, a way you could do it is that it's Harvey Dent in a courtroom where they wheel in the man who's, on the defense, who's a man in a body cast who turns out to be the Joker. And it would be revealed that Jack's Joker survived the fall because this is a comic book movie. And this is shown here by our fan and patron, Logan Wood. Joker believes Batman is somewhere in this courtroom, and so he sets off a bomb, blowing himself up, which scars Harvey Dent into becoming Two-Face. Obviously, this was not made, but we can see how this is kind of foreshadowing of an instance where Harvey would have been scarred by an explosion rather than acid, something that harkens back to, the 50s, where they brought Two-Face back, and the explosion ends up sort of undoing the plastic surgery that was on him and turning him into Two-Face again. But of course, this is foreshadowing of what would happen in Batman the Animated Series, The Dark Knight. Like, it seems like they're very acid in the courtroom phobic these days when it comes to the Harvey Dent origin.
Batman Forever is the only one to do it.
Yeah, people make fun of the Batman Forever origin. I'm like, you realize, like, it's the most faithful Two-Faced origin.
Like, we got Batman Forever and the new Long Halloween film being the only ones to adapt the actual acid in the courtroom that I can recall. I don't think I've seen it any other time.
Yeah, there's not in the other, like, even Batman versus Two-Face. It didn't happen there. It's like, it's another explosion again. But I mean, it makes, like, you can let it slide a little bit for Batman 66. They have a very campy way to make it happen.
Yeah, no, it works in the context of its story. I'm cool with it.
Yeah. I always thought, I think it's funny how the only, like, in Batman Forever, that's the only live-action Boss Maroni who gets to scar Harvey Dent into becoming Two-Face, which is like Maroni's main purpose in the comics anyway. And then any other time they bring in Maroni, he never does it. Yeah. Eric Roberts in The Dark Knight, he doesn't scar Harvey. Maroni in Gotham dies before he never even meets Harvey Dent. And then that like
drove me crazy.
Yeah, I'm just like, well, what's the point of having Maroni if you're not even going to have him scar Dent? And then we'll see what they do with Matt Reeves, but Maroni's name is dropped in the movie. Who knows if he had a trial with a certain Harvey Dent? But Maroni's name is dropped. But I'm not super optimistic we're going to see Maroni in the actual movies to throw the acid in the face. But
going back to what you were saying before about Jim Carrey, I live in and also Eckhart. I live in terror that whatever they do with him, he's just going to be there to be secondary to some other main villain yet again. Because
you're talking about in the Reeves verse?
In the Reeves verse, because I don't think they can resist the idea of having Harvey Dent as the ally against the main villain, and then becoming Two-Face and then becoming a pawn of the main villain. Just like we see getting overshadowed the way he was by Jim Carrey's Riddler and Heath Ledger's Joker. Mm-hmm. I would love to see someone actually embrace him as, an actual character in his own right and a lead supporting character and a lead villain at the same time. Mm-hmm. But I'm not too optimistic.
Just because of the nature of just the pattern of this, or because of something specific to the Matt Reeves verse in general?
Well, I just mean just the pattern, Mm-hmm. I haven't, because we haven't really seen anybody who seems to really embrace and understand what can make the character work as both hero and villain at the same time. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love Tommy Lee Jones's Two-Face in his own right as a late golden age wackadoodle character. I have a blast with him. Yeah, I totally do. And I loved Aaron.
It's not the
Aaron
greatest
Eckhart's
representation of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved Aaron Eckhart's Harvey Dent, with some caveats here and there. Obviously, I'm thinking. Right. But I thought it was a great job, and then of course it out the window. So mm-hmm. I've been burned too many times, and I feel like people just generally don't seem to see the potential the character has. So
yeah, and it could also just be people are just like, it's been done before. We don't need to touch the character. And I'm just like, well, I mean, to be fair, if that's your attitude, then good thing you're not touching the character. Yeah. At that point, like if their main thing is to like if they're going to bring Two-Face in, but all he's going to do is just be like what you described in terms of a pawn of another villain, then I'd rather they skip him. I'd rather just not bring him in at this point.
I mean, I'm not to keep jumping ahead to what Hamm did in Batman '89, but that's another reason I was just so damn impressed by how seriously and how focused he was on Harvey Dent as a character. In mm-hmm. on so many levels, in so many ways. When he could have used them for one or two plot themes and ideas, mm-hmm. and he was one of the richest takes on the character I have ever seen. And I was just so.
I knew for sure you were gonna love that when I got to those issues. When I started reading, I'm just like, oh, this is very Harvey. This is not super Bruce centric. This is extremely Harvey centric and stuff.
I'll get to that. I'll save the rest for in due time.
We'll get there in a bit. So basically, we know this idea did not come to fruition. Jack Nicholson did not come back to being the Joker. Billy Dee Williams also did not get to come back to be Harvey Dent. Instead, the studio was just like, well, the people know Penguin and Catwoman. Those are going to be the villains. You have no say in the matter, Tim. And that's kind of what happened. So Hamm never really got to write a full script with the Harvey Dent character, and his actual script with Penguin and Catwoman was written. We've gone over it, and I thought it was interesting in our interview with him that Sam Hamm just basically flat out said, I couldn't nail Penguin. Like I just didn't have a finger hold on him, and I thought that was interesting for him to admit, because the Penguin is just not as interesting of a character in his script compared to the Waters one. And as we went over, the next writer was Daniel Waters, one of our other favorite guests this year. And
that was such a blast. That was,
yeah,
he was so interesting and so funny.
Thank you. In the first 5 seconds of that episode, Waters shoots down the rumor that Christopher Walken's Max Shreck was ever Harvey Dent. So that's been an internet rumor for years. Waters has been on record even before our podcast in it, but check out that interview as well as our video essay, Max Shreck was never Harvey Dent. But right down to the screaming corpse, which is my reaction whenever somebody seems to insist this is true.
Oh, man, that's a hell of a thumbnail, by the way.
Yeah,
good job, Dan.
Well, I think this was Zach.
That might have been Zach, yeah.
That might have been Zach. Dan, let us know.
We were using this font a lot during the Zach years.
That's true.
Zach time. Yeah.
Yes. So what was the real role for Harvey Dent? Because it wasn't Max Shreck. Everyone on the internet seems to think Max Shreck was the original role, that Harvey Dent, I guess, was going to be some sort of abusive boss to Selena Kyle, and then her tasing him at the end would lead to the scarring. And I'm just like, well, if that ever was true, that would be a terrible way to follow up on Billy Dee Williams in '89. You've got a guy who's like very much seems like he's a good guy, and it turns out, he's just an abusive boss, and he's an asshole, and he's teaming up with Penguin. I'm like, this is a terrible version of Harvey Dent. So like, if that was ever true.
What that does is, unfortunately, what we're seeing a lot with the way Two-Face is being written now, which is, what if he was a two-faced politician? Which we keep seeing, especially lately. It's, what if he was a two-faced politician? So I could easily imagine someone, especially someone who didn't care about the character and wanted to go just with the basic concept. What if we took that Harvey Dent from the first movie and revealed that he was two-faced? Ooh. I could have believed it on that level, even though it's obviously total, an urban legend bullcrap.
Yeah. But it turns out, even though Daniel Waters is on record being like, we didn't follow the comics on any of this shit. Turns out, as we revealed to him in our interview, actually, you kind of did. Some of the DNA of the comics is still in this movie. You just reimagined it in your own way.
Daniel Waters like, you fucking kidding me right now?
Yeah, I know.
I didn't want to be faithful, damn it.
I can't believe this.
Which is hilarious. Because he prided
made
himself.
His year, I feel like.
He prided himself too on just like, we didn't go on the comics and fuck your comics. I'm just like, actually, we have this comic here where Selena Kyle is in the middle of the street, somewhat dying, and the cats are around her. Did you come up with that? And he's like, I thought I did, but I guess not.
Oh man, that's just in the DNA of the myth of the Batman. All of his characters are just in all of our DNA now.
I mean, just
even if we don't know it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just look at the whole, like, Harvey Dent as Bruce's friend type of situation. We have, like, Sam Hamm writing it in the script in 1986, and then Bill Messner-Loebs, who probably didn't have access to that script at any point, was just like, you know what, that would be a good idea, and he writes it in the comic strip, and then, we presumed that potentially, Paul Dini and company behind the animated series might have read that, but if they didn't, then you have, like, 3 completely separate parties coming up with this idea of Harvey and Bruce being friends. So, like, it's kind of interesting how these ideas come about. It's sort of just something's in the zeitgeist, and at some point somebody's able to bring it to life, even if other people sort of wrote it into scripts beforehand. So Waters himself, like, I would not have been surprised if Waters, in his, like, fuck your comics, guys, type of stage, wrote a draft where Harvey Dent was in the Max Shreck role. That's kind of what makes it sort of a believable rumor. But when he shared his actual role for Harvey, it actually was very, very straightforward and very much what you would think a Harvey Dent role would be, which is that it's his origin story. He would have been caught in a sequence where the Red Triangle Circus Gang is wreaking havoc, as he told us exclusively in the podcast, and during the crossfire, Harvey would have gotten scarred. And then towards the end, he would have had another scene where he's recovering from the scarring, and he would see the chaos going on, and he would flip a coin and it'd land on the good side, and he would sort of wait until the next movie type of thing. And according to Waters, Tim Burton was just like, or as he did in the episode, the thumb going by, pointing behind him type of thing to throw it out, and he just nixed the idea because it was mainly. It seems like Burton just did not want any connection to Batman '89 outside of Keaton, Michael Gough, Pat Hingle, and the Batmobile, and Danny Elfman's fantastic theme, of course. So like it's kind of it's unfortunate, but it also would have really changed Billy Dee Williams' Harvey Dent to Two-Face transformation if they were never going to follow up on that, and we wouldn't have had this comic to talk about either if they already took care of that. So Batman Returns went without Harvey Dent, which leads into the third film. Again, internet loves to say that, this is where Tim Burton had a whole script written. He contracted Billy Dee Williams. He had plans for Billy Dee Williams to be in a third film called Batman Continues. Again, this is all bullshit. Batman Continues is just a made-up title. The person who wanted to bring Two-Face into this movie was not Tim Burton. It was Joel Schumacher, and he already wanted Tommy Lee Jones. As we talked about, the idea that Billy Dee was literally involved with any sort of Batman a third Batman film, a Batman Continues, all that is a myth. And it was down to the Bachelors, who we talked to on the podcast, who came up with the Two-Face for that movie. And a lot of people feel like Billy Dee got screwed over by all this, but to be honest, I can't see Billy Dee Williams as the Two-Face in Batman Forever. I don't think he got screwed over. I think he dodged a bullet.
Yeah, I know I actually should have watched. He did one movie that was a secret agent parody. I think during like the height of when after Naked Gun came out, and those kinds of films were hot. He did. He did one. I already forgot what it was called. It was something like Secret Agent Double Cool or some title like that. And I should have watched that to see what his comedic chops might have been like. His bigger, what he might have done. But yeah, as much as I have appreciate his dramatic range, I am not sure he could have. I mean, then again, I'm not sure I wouldn't have been sure Tommy Lee Jones could have pulled that out of him. So what do I know? What do I know? Like, I mean, I know Tommy Lee Jones was not happy at least being there with Jim Carrey, but he's
not sanctioning the buffoonery.
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy he brought as much as he brought to that. He didn't sleepwalk through that role. He brought everything to it. God bless him. God bless him. Yeah, why won't you just die?
Yeah, again, I don't see Billy Dee Williams doing this, and if he was, I think people would have been weirded out. They would be like, wait, so this is why he was in '89? Like, I think it won out. Like, I think it turned out the way that it should have, honestly, in the script.
Yeah.
I mean, you bring up the clients thing.
Yeah.
At that point, the movies were also doing that thing that the show did, which was, let's get big name stars.
That too, yeah.
And Tommy Lee Jones was, hot off his Oscar for The Fugitive?
Yeah.
I remember he was when he showed up at the Oscars. He had his head shaved, and it was a whole thing at the time. Yeah. I think it was for a role, or he wears a hairpiece or something. And Wizard Magazine, when they announced that Tommy Lee Jones was Two-Face, had a picture of Two-Face saying like, "He'd better have hair when he plays me."
He did. It was purple. So
it also makes sense that you get Tommy Lee Jones because Billy Dee Williams' star was kind of falling by that point. He was doing more and more direct-to-video stuff and TV work.
And again, they just weren't beholden to continuity. They're already recasting Batman in this.
Yeah.
So it's continuity is just not a thing. And even if it was, it's just thrown out the window. The script that the Bachelors wrote was for Tommy Lee Jones. That was already like a thing before they even like wrote the first word in the script. So they were never going to really carry over Billy Dee Williams. And there were no references specifically to the Harvey Dent in the Batman '89 movie either. In that script, there are Batman '89 references in the early scripts before the movie was shot, but like it's nothing to like Harvey Dent. No stuff about them kind of working together or Harvey supporting him during the events of the Joker attack. Like none of that type of stuff. So
Yeah, we had, for that we had to go, as you know, for the novelization by Peter David.
Oh yeah. So I forgot to. Thank you for reminding me. So the Peter David novelization is the only one that really sort of tries to tie them together, and even then, it ties it into Batman Returns, with Harvey meeting Bruce on not Bruce, but Harvey meeting Batman on the rooftop, and Batman telling Harvey where the Red Triangle Circus Gang is, so that his name will be cleared at the end. Now it's kind of weird because now you're kind of picturing Michael Keaton's Batman in that scene with Tommy Lee Jones, I guess, but it could still be Billy Dee Williams. Like, it's kind of, since it's the book, it's up to you who you're casting in this. But, you know, it very clearly, whenever I read it, very clearly shifts from Keaton in that one scene to, like, Kilmer for the rest of the book.
I'll be honest, when I read that scene, I just kind of imagine just a black bat-shaped shadow, because that it felt like Peter David was doing his best to write a comic Batman story out of this script.
Yeah,
that was my take on it.
I could definitely see that. Yeah. That's a very special novelization. Peter David, as Andrew says, a friend of our podcast.
Love him. Best guy.
Yeah, I hadn't heard. Is that sarcasm? I detect.
Heavens, no.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna ask you about that later.
Sure, buddy.
Yes, let's move on, shall we? I have also been in certain communities that have rubbed shoulders with that particular individual. Yes. So not rubbed shoulders, clashed a little bit. Let's say. So. Anyway, I see Lego. Hey, the Lego Two-Face.
Lego Two-Face.
Harvey face now, guys, not Two-Face.
Yeah.
Not the Two-Faces. Harvey.
Melty boy.
Yeah.
For years, there's been this fantasy of like, well, what if Billy D got to play it? And suddenly that dream was realized in a little movie called the Lego Batman movie, as we're showing right here. Billy D, unfortunately,
the different colored hand also.
Oh yeah,
that's so great, man.
Could be his glove, yeah.
Whatever that is.
It feels a little Batman Forever-ish, mainly because of the color of the hair, but the purple. But the actual scarring is like, if you look at that, I'm like, Jesus, it's close to Aaron Eckhart's with, like, you see the bone and stuff.
It's like it looks like they took a magnifying glass to the figure, but the figure also had plastic flesh and a skeleton underneath.
Yeah,
and it's cool how they mix that sense of this is a toy, but they're also people, and I think totally. It's a totally inspired, as opposed to the Lego Batman, the video games, where he's just a Two-Face.
This is regular Two-Face, yeah.
This is a really inspired design, even before you bring in Billy Dee Williams. But then you bring in Billy Dee Williams, and it just takes it to a whole other level.
Yeah. I loved that they brought him in, even though he has 4 lines. He's like barely in it.
Barely.
But
all the villains, you got Conan O'Brien there to deliver one single hilarious
Riddler,
line as the Riddler. You have you had
Killer Croc has the best one where he plugs something in. He's like, I did something.
I did something. It was so precious.
It's one of the best Batman movies, man. It's fucking.
It truly is.
It's an S-tier fucking movie, dude. It's so good, man.
Totally. I completely agree. Unironically, completely agreed.
Unironically, dude, it's just so top tier.
We were ranking in our $10 Patreon. We were ranking the different Batman themes, and then I was just like, I should probably include this one, which is the "Who's the Batman" song in the beginning. That Batman
that
sings.
beginning was so
and
good.
And we ranked it as high as the Elfman and the Neil Hefti Batman theme. It was an S-tier theme.
You kind of have to, dude. It's just that good, man.
It beat out all the Hans Zimmer Batman themes.
I stand by it, man. I just stand by it.
I do
dude.
too.
It's so good.
I ain't gonna argue.
It's one of DC's best things in the past 20 fucking years.
It is. So 2021, we finally get the continuation that we had wanted to see in comic book form, which is the Batman 89 comic series with Sam Hamm on writing duties, Joe Quinones doing the art, and I told Sam Hamm in our interview, but Harvey Dent was really the best part of this comic to me. So let's dive into it. Spoilers, of course, for the Batman 89 comic, though if you are a listener to this podcast, you've probably read them at least twice already by this point. So in this version, Harvey is engaged to Barbara Gordon, who's kind of modeled off of Winona Ryder, which may seem like a stretch in real life considering how young she was in the 80s, but since it's a comic where the characters are shown at different ages, I think it works. And while it's not a pairing I'd opt for in current continuity, of course, with Two-Face and Barbara, this is a reimagining where Barbara is an adult cop. And it kind of works to tie her into the story, I thought. So, like, it was... I didn't hate this choice and stuff. I think the classic is always going to be Gilda Gold. And I know you're a fan, John, of that. But, it's a lot of the times in these adaptations, the characters who are not going to be something or someone end up kind of getting the short end of the stick again.
I think it's really interesting to make him be with Barbara, considering the friction he has with Jim Gordon.
I think that's part of it, yeah.
And that brings in a different dynamic, which I'm just glad it wasn't another Bruce Wayne love triangle thing happening with Harvey being the odd man out, the way we had in Dark Knight, and also didn't that also happen in the Telltale Batman game?
Telltale one, yeah. Yeah, with Selina. Yeah, you're telling me you didn't want it to be a scenario where Batman wanted to quit and pass it all to Harvey while also stealing his girlfriend? Like, you didn't think that was going to work?
Not really a fan. Not really a fan. Look, I love the Batman Harvey relationship as a friendship, that dynamic. I think that's really important. Having them be rivals, I don't care for that. But this was a really interesting take, and I really liked how that all worked out.
Yeah, and Bruce's dynamic with Barbara is very much like Bruce and Gilda or Bruce and Grace in the animated series. There's no love triangle here. He's very supportive. He's trying to be a friend to both in this. So I thought Hamm's characterization of the Harvey side of things for this was just very well done here. I've seen some criticism of this as well. Someone thought that Harvey should be more of a playboy, in keeping with Billy Dee's comments about Adam Clayton Powell and being a playboy figure. But I'm also like, well, it's called character development. Like, even Bruce Wayne is considered a playboy, and he has a girlfriend in every movie just about. So it doesn't bother me.
Ham put it in there. I mean, as far as I was concerned, it's in there, like right from the first page or two. He says, "Hey, I'm not bad looking." I mean, I think Ham managed to put just enough of that in there as well to make it work. I mean, this Harvey is juggling many roles at once.
Yeah, and I could see him and Bruce in the old days, when they're younger, going on like double dates, to keep with the two theme and stuff, and going through several different dates and stuff before. Like, now he's older, they're both older, they're settling down and stuff. He's found like the person he wants to be with Barbara, so like it makes sense for this. Hamm also carries over his idea that Bruce and Harvey are friends in this. Now we finally get to see, in some form, Keaton's Bruce Wayne and Billy Dee Williams as Harvey in scenes together. Keep in mind that it's hard to conceptualize this in the movie because they look like they could be around the same age, but Billy Dee Williams is actually 14 years older than Michael Keaton in real life. Billy Dee Williams is in his 50s when he plays Harvey Dent in Batman '89, which he does not look at. He looks like he still could be in his late 30s or so.
He looks like 70s Billy Dee Williams.
Yeah, that's true in this comic too. As well. So like they could have pulled off being childhood friends, even though there's like a big age difference there. But yeah, I think the Bruce and Harvey friendship is something that we're sorely lacking in the live action adaptations. The most that we got in Batman Forever was Tommy Lee Jones being like, "You've always been a good friend," and I'm just like, that's all we get.
When I want more. Tell me more. Oh nope, he's dead. Never mind.
Yeah, he's dead.
So much for that.
As we talked about with Dark Knight, they're rivals the whole time, and Harvey just thinks he's a rich douche, and I'm like, okay, well, we didn't get with that either. So,
that's more of a Long Halloween's influence.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. So that for sure is Long Halloween's influence for that. But it's the next time that they bring him in, they better have this dynamic because we haven't seen it on film before.
Yeah.
So going into some of the more interesting Harvey-centric elements, Harvey grows up in Burnside, raised by the mechanic Jerome Otis, who uses the two-headed coin for a different purpose. In the Eye of the Beholder storyline that we've talked with John about on this podcast, it was one where the coin was actually from Harvey's trauma, his dramatic childhood of an alcoholic father who would flip the two-headed coin as a twisted game for that night. And it's interesting that Sam Hamm, I don't know if he deliberately is trying to switch this. Maybe we should just bring him back on the podcast again and ask him. But
I'd listen to it. He's great. He's great.
Hamm returns.
Hamm returns, yes. It seems that he is flipping the script on this. Now the dynamic is something positive associated with the two-headed coin. Now it's something that he used to encourage Harvey to follow his dreams. As we see here in this comic strip, it's heads, comic panel. He says, heads, you grow up to be a big man. Tails, you're nothing but a bum. And of course, it's a two-headed coin, so it's always going to tell Harvey that he's going to be a big man, that he's going to make it, that he's going to make his dreams come true. And that's Jerome Otis being a way better father than Harvey's father in the traditional continuity post-crisis. So as somebody who was like very much, you spoke that how the Eye of the Beholder was something that spoke to you in a cathartic way with the whole abusive father storyline. What were your thoughts on this twist, John?
What I think makes it so inspired is that this Harvey grows up already in a very difficult situation. When we get little hints of his flashback with his what he was growing up trying to escape, and dreaming of escaping from that and becoming a big man. I think that instilling that hope in him adds a whole different twist to his tragedy, to the impending tragedy we all know is coming. And I thought that was really a beautiful choice for this specific Harvey in this specific story, considering where everything else goes. I was not at all bothered by the subversion. I thought it was a brilliant subversion of that for this particular kind of Harvey.
Yeah, it surprised me when I got to this point. Even just giving an origin to the coin in itself sometimes can be interesting to see, because it's had various different origins for this one. But the fact that it was one of the rare, or feels like one of the rare positive origins for it, in a way, was something that I thought was interesting.
It represents hope to him in a lot of ways, which it does with very tragic consequences all throughout the story.
It makes it hurt worse, really, that this used to be something that was an object of hope, an object of so much positive emotions, as opposed to something, in Eye of the Beholder, that type of backstory sort of gives a sort of tragic feeling of destiny, or tragic feeling of fate, And
the fact that Harvey said that he always knew that the coin was two-headed, but he still did it because he loved and trusted Otis. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful. Oh, yeah. I love that. That's beautiful.
Again, this is an element that I wish was like actually put into a movie. If they actually did this. But oh well. Other things that make this different from the traditional version, obviously, is Harvey is black in this, and as we talked about earlier, Sam Hamm really leans into the fact that this is not just a different race. This is a completely different type of backstory. One element that I know Andrew and I discussed before was the code switching type of thing of Harvey. Harvey already has some duality through that, switching between how he talks and acts with people from the community that he grew up in versus the politicians and rich people like Bruce Wayne and stuff, and he goes back and forth on that. And again, I see a lot of criticisms on this comic for trying to inject 2021, 2022 politics into something that takes place in the 90s, and I'm just like, sadly, the idea of somebody who is conflicted in his role as a politician, I don't think that is specific to 2022. Or the idea of police brutality towards black people, that's not really new either. Look at Billy Dee's movies in the 70s,
Yeah. A lot of times when people complain something's too political, I just wonder. That's all I'm going to say.
Also, how weird is it to go political for a character who's a politician?
Yeah,
exactly.
It's really not a real stretch here, guys.
Yeah.
It's just not a big deal, man. It's totally fine.
Kind of part of what his role is.
I was really interested by the fact that Hamm chose Burnside of all places. He actually chose Burnside, and I'd be curious to know if he'd read that Batgirl of Burnside run where that neighborhood was introduced, or if he just because what I find interesting about that is that, for one thing, obviously the name is a very heavy-handed Two-Face.
Like, maybe it could be a pun. Is what I was thinking.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think it's
true.
I think it's awfully interesting to take Burnside, which was, let's say, what are the Williamsburg, the hip neighborhood in Brooklyn.
Oh, I see what you're going with this. Yeah.
Take a super gentrified, white, young, hip, white centric neighborhood and recast it as the poor black neighborhood. I thought that added something really interesting that I don't know how intentional that was on Hamm's part, but I thought that was really interesting.
God damn it, we got to bring him back. Hamm, get back here.
Hamm, please return.
I think he's also brought up, because I think he was responding to a tweet about this. He was also bringing up that some of the stuff that's in here is more inspired by the LA riots and Rodney King type stuff. He's not necessarily bringing 2021 into 1995. He's bringing 1995 to 1995. That's part of what it is. Harvey's
he's a man. He's seen history, and he's seeing history repeat.
Yeah.
Plus, our comics are like ways to discuss ideas and themes and stuff, right? And to kind of tackle difficult stuff. So, at least that's how I see it. So, and that's what kind of brings the whole medium up to begin with, right? So, people that are complaining about that kind of thing, I'm just not like that. I'm not like that.
I think it's also one where, if we're looking at it from a character perspective, it for sure deepens Harvey Dent, because he is already split between two sides before he even gets scarred. In this, he's split between, he's technically part of the law and the system, but then, he also sees that people from his community get screwed over by that system, and people from his community also, resent him for it. Like Drake, the Robin of this comic, basically just flat out tells him, I'm not helping you, you're a cop. That type of thing. And stuff that's an interesting dynamic that you're not going to see in regular comic continuity with Harvey Dent. That's not going to happen with between Harvey Dent and Tim Drake or Dick Grayson. It's just not part of that. Not part of their backstory. It's not part of that culture. But that's kind of what's in here, and it just makes it very interesting. Even this panel here, where Harvey Bullock off screen calls him a two-faced bastard because he's trying to support his community, but in the process has said something that goes against the cops. So, he can't please everybody type of thing. He's for sure going to piss off one side when he sides with another. And that's a really interesting dynamic that I think is a lot more interesting than just, he's Harvey Dent, he's going to clean up the streets.
Yeah.
The end,
And while I dislike a lot of the stories treating him as just an ambitious politician that we see more and more these days, I love the way that he's ambitious but also still does genuinely want to do good, and how that conflict within himself leads all the way through the story. And also we see how he pisses off people on all sides as he tries to have it both ways, have it all ways,
which I think is very realistic for somebody in that position, whether you're the Billy Dee Williams Harvey Dent or if you're the current continuity Harvey Dent. When you're in a political position, you're not going to be in a position where everyone loves you. You're just not. Yeah. Certain people will hate you and certain people will love you. That's just how it is, especially these days. So that's just kind of what it was, and I think it's a very smart take on Harvey. One thing that I thought was interesting, Harvey does not work with Batman in this. He's trying to bring the Vigilante in, making it different from what we'd end up seeing in the post-Year One era with Eye of the Beholder and Long Halloween. It mainly exists as a made-up backstory that Bruce proposes to Harvey towards the end, which I thought was interesting. And then, just like with other adaptations, there is no Maroni in the courtroom. Though at least there wasn't some random character named Maroni as a red herring, because I come to hate that at this point. But Harvey gets scarred due to a heroic act of trying to save Drake Winston from an arson attack in the garage, where he gets rescued by Drake himself and Bruce Wayne, kind of a pseudo Batman and Robin team up before they're in costume together. And during this, he imagines a world where he rescued Drake and came out unscathed and became a hero, and sort of introduces this idea of Dent believing that he's seen some sort of multiverse in some way, and that the coin is like his path towards like choosing his way or to guide him around those worlds, which I'm just like, that's a new take on that. I wasn't really expecting that.
That's a really like I would see that take if Two-Face was in a Flash story or something, but in a Batman 89 comic, that's yeah.
I gotta admit, this was an idea I was actually thinking about ever since that famous Community episode where they would I mean, you've seen the memes with Donald Glover coming in with pizza and everything's on fire.
Yes.
The actual context of that episode.
Oh
is, yeah. They're sitting up. A character throws a six-sided die in the air, and we see the multiverse of each different timeline depending on which number it comes up and how it changes things. Mm-hmm. And I thought about, it was one of those silly little fan things I get in my head sometimes. Of just, I wonder if Harvey would be creating a new multiverse every time, a split alternate universe every time he flipped the coin. And
that's actually, yeah.
I had forgotten Denny O'Neil actually played with that in a very weird place. Denny O'Neil in 2010 wrote an essay for a book for one of those for supervillains and philosophy. It was one of those essay books.
Oh God, I think I heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah. And he came up with this really wacky, whole different take where Harvey Dent is a Calvinist and a super religious guy who admired the Spanish Inquisition, stuff like that.
Wait, so Calvinists are predeterminists, right? They believe in fate. They're fatalistic as hell, I think.
I think so, but
so
don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that, man. Yeah. I have not developed my my Calvinist hyperfixation, but I'll let you know. I'll let you know when I fall into that fandom. But then near the end of it, Denny O'Neil introduces the idea of Harvey realizing that he can tap into other possibilities, other universes with the coin, buried in this really bizarre take on the character for a great philosophical point. Mm-hmm. And between that and the Community episode, I was just thinking, boy, I'd like to see that. I could see that, and seeing it happen here was really interesting. Really interesting, I thought.
Yeah.
The way, I don't know if you're. I mean, my only complaint about it, honestly, is the fact that we didn't get any foreshadowing.
It's suddenly just like, hey, Harvey, remember this talk you heard about the multiverse? I'm like, wait, what was this?
Literally, all I would have wanted, because you mentioned hearing some blowhard talk about Schrodinger's cat and going, that sounds like bull crap, but maybe it's a good idea now. Mm-hmm. All I would have wanted was just a single mention, a line to establish that had happened before coming up with this.
Seems like Calvinists believe in predestination more than other branches of Christianity. Please correct me in the comments, but that seems to be the case. All right, thank you.
Interesting.
All right. Well, all right. And then him going from that to flipping the coin for all the other possibilities is.
Well, wait. In terms of predestination, then, like, would he really believe in that? Because I feel like he does the opposite with the coin.
That is true. See, this is getting real heavy at this point.
Denny O'Neil, you might have fucked up.
Well,
maybe that's just a background and then doesn't really have anything to do thematically. I don't know.
That's the problem with so many Two-Face stories. Sometimes the coin tells what fate is, and other times it's follow whatever the whims of the coin. There is no fate, depending on the writers.
Only morality in a cruel world is chance, like that.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, exactly.
All of that kind of thing. Yeah,
because it all depends on what the writer wants to tell with the character at any given point.
But I like that wacky idea though of like every decision causes a different universe to branch off. If there's infinite amount of universes, then there's there's just so many versions. Everybody that makes a decision that actually causes a different branch off in the timeline, kind of. And I think that probably harkens back to some sort of actual quantum theory or something. But I've never actually thought about Two-Face in a sci-fi or sci-fact kind of context like that before.
To be fair, I hadn't thought of it until this part in the comic, where I'm just like, there's a multiverse thing. I mean, to be fair, it can be written off as like hallucination.
Sure, easily.
But
it is one
where you're just like, well, wait a minute. Why haven't they done an Elseworlds type of thing where it's just like, what if the coin landed on this part in this story? What if the coin landed on the other side in this story? Like, what's, it's all sometimes predictable where he's like got the gun on Batman and lands on like the clean side and he can't kill him, even though he's got him in the perfect death trap. But then well, what about the time where it could have landed on the scarred side and he's in the perfect death trap? Like he's gonna go for that. So it'd be interesting to see.
Hamm plays with it totally later on in the final issue. So cool.
This all reminds me of like in No Country for Old Men, and near the end, where she says to him, "The coin don't have no say," and then he says, "The coin and I came here. The same thing that brought the coin here brought me here." Something like that. Yeah. It's like fate brought both him and the coin there. He and the coin are fate. And I always thought that was incredible. That made me appreciate Two-Face more. And I wonder if do you think that was part of this comic in any way, or has that ever been in any of the comics? Any kind of ideas like that?
Well, I think about the way she said Kelly MacDonald's character, the way she sort of refuted that. It's just. Did she say something along the lines of it's just you? And
she doesn't believe it, but he most certainly does, though, right?
Yeah, I like to believe that he was tweaked in that one moment, that he maybe blinked just for a second in his life.
Yeah,
somebody questioned him on it. Yeah,
definitely.
I like that thing about it. I think about the idea of him, every coin toss causes different multiverses. I think about like the Time Council in Loki from Marvel and Marvel's comics, the DC equivalent. You have Rip Hunter and the Time Masters just constantly getting migraines, having to clean up and deal with all these divergent timelines happening at all times from this one wacky little guy with his coin.
Yeah, that's great.
God damn it, Harvey! Rip Hunter comes in.
He did it again.
He flipped the coin again. Well, this entire discussion just shows that this is way better than the other Two-Faces in the other movies, because we just don't have anything as interesting to talk about in comparison for this one.
Wild, wacky idea he throws in the third issue of Batman 89, and it just blows up. It just takes the idea of Two-Face to whole new levels that you could play with.
For sure, yeah. Again, I feel like there's a reason that when Sam Hamm was on the show and we talked about this comic, it was mainly about Two-Face. We did not really talk about Catwoman or Robin at all. We talked about Two-Face just because I'm just like, well, wait a minute. Like, I want to, clearly this is where you paid a lot of attention to this, and this is where a lot of discussion is going to come up. So I think it's very evident that this was something that he really wanted to bring to life now in the comic, and he did.
And I was delighted.
Oh, I know. Yes. Let's see. Harvey hides out in an abandoned subway, recruits former members of the Joker gang to steal evidence that will help him blackmail public officials, while also, and this is an important part that Hamm wanted to put in, he redirects the stolen money towards the communities that he grew up in Burnside. And this is a major part that Hamm wanted to bring back from the Golden Age comics, way back in Detective Comics 66, where when Two-Face in the modern comics, if he flips the coin and it lands on the clean side, he just doesn't kill you, But in the old days, it's just like, if I flip the coin and it lands on the clean side, that means I'm going to donate all the money to the local orphanage.
Instead of neutral, it's good.
Yeah, it's just flat out good. It's just like, I'm going to rescue a puppy today. Like it's all stuff that's like, okay, if depending on the coin, he could either be a hero or a villain, not just like a guy who could be, less evil.
Yeah, a guy that just doesn't kill ain't exactly a hero.
Exactly.
Well, it's not really even interesting to me that he would just be as Hamm said, the neutral option as opposed to a good option.
Right.
It makes him it just makes him just a bad guy. I mean, I don't know why more people wouldn't want to play with the unpredictability of that behavior. And especially even if you wanted to call into question whether it's really good or not, if he's doing it because the coin said to do it, the way Hamm does.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. On this, and it just makes him more interesting character, and it harkens back to the original Jekyll and Hyde inspiration origins for this character. It's one where it continues to play with the dichotomy of this, and shows that like there's a lot more to this character than just, as we said, like being neutral. And if I flip the coin, it's clean heads. You'll maybe survive the next 2 hours. Like it's a lot more interesting this way.
Yeah.
Two-Face also discovers in the story that Bruce Wayne is Batman and has a confrontation with Bruce in the cave, where we don't pull up the main comic, but the comic switches in terms of showing you what could happen depending on, I mean, we know what really happens, but it almost shows you 2 different scenarios in terms of one in which Batman and Catwoman get taken out by Two-Face, and one in which Two-Face himself gets taken out by Catwoman in a way, or in as much of a way as we're shown. He's hanging on by this wire here, and Catwoman uses the whip to basically cut it, and he falls into the abyss below, which presumably is where he dies. However, we didn't see a body. So who knows? Maybe Two-Face could come back. Who knows?
Hamm also made it clear early on that the injury, he was a dead man walking.
Oh yeah, that's it.
So I mean, I'd love to survive.
Me too. I'm not betting on it myself. I'm just saying.
And also, really, I mean, I feel like the poor guy. This is about as happy an ending to him as he thinks he could have. The way this goes.
Look at this face here.
Yeah, seriously. He dies happy, I guess. It's so
Thanks,
damn sad.
Catwoman. No, dude, this is a time where I realize it's not actually Michelle Pfeiffer playing her as a comic, but like this is a time where I hated Catwoman when this happened, because I'm just like, oh, come on, like we were so close to actually almost resolving this in a way between 2 friends and stuff, and she just completely fucks this up for him, which I think is the whole point. I think this is intentional on Hamm's part. But like, I'm just like, if you wanted a way to get me to hate Catwoman, this is a way to do it. she really fucks this whole thing up.
Here she comes to ruin everything.
Yeah. So overall, as we said before, way better Two-Face than what we got in Batman Forever or in the last 15 minutes of Dark Knight. So I guess we can sort of close this off with overall thoughts on the Billy Dee Williams Two-Face and any elements you wish we could see in the next version of Two-Face on film. I guess I could go first, then we can go to Andrew, and then end with John on this, since you're the Two-Face authority here. But I'd say, Billy Dee Williams is, like, he had the range to do it. We just never got to see it, unfortunately. And even in Lego Batman movie, he always seems to get the short end of the stick, just like the character, I guess. So no wonder they seem to be a perfect fit. But I'm glad that they got the comic series for this to sort of show us this. And in terms of the main elements I wish to see for the next version of Two-Face on film, the Bruce and Harvey friendship, they got to have that. Like, I just, no more of this rival shit over, like, this, they love the same girl, just have them be friends. And then play around more with the idea of him having redemption. Like, I think it's weird to me that Penguin is the one who's like known to kind of play both sides in a way, and is like the one who's always the informant to Batman, where I'm just like, shouldn't that be Two-Face? Like, shouldn't he be the one who's like, kind of sometimes helping Batman and stuff? So like, that's kind of what I'd love to see, sort of the anti-hero version that John mentioned. So that's kind of what I'd like. Over to Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything more to add than what I said in the beginning, as far as like such a presence for a villain. And whenever you told me that there was no Batman 66 version, I had to think to myself, like, damn, really? Like, I couldn't believe it, because I thought surely he must have had an episode, but he didn't. Like, that's just the kind of presence the character's always had in my mind. And John, I really love seeing like passion for like non-main characters. I mean, he's a main villain, but he's a villain. He's not Batman, he's not even an anti-hero really. He's a straight up villain, but you really connect with this character on a really deep level. So yeah, I like seeing that. And if there's anybody out there in the comments or whatever, like, let us know if like Clayface is your favorite, Mr. Freeze, or like, and we're talking like favorite, like John with Two-Face, like not just favorite villain. You like him more than Batman, like, like let us know if there's a character out there. I'd like to hear stories like that, because we all know everybody likes Batman and everything like that, but to see if there's more people out there like John, that'd be interesting to see. So yeah,
for sure. All right, John, overall thoughts on Billy Dee Williams and elements you wish to see in the next version of Two-Face on film, whether that's the Reeves verse or whoever comes after.
Well, first, on Batman 89 and Billy Dee Williams' likeness, at least, being in this, I really feel like it was a tantalizing look into an alternate universe where he could have played this. Because after seeing those films, too, of his, I could actually totally hear his voice throughout this. I could hear his voice and how he could have played all of this perfectly. And maybe he even could, if they did an animated adaptation of it that was faithful, as faithful as it was to this book, rather than just hauling off and doing its own thing. He could. I wonder if he could still do like Shatner and bring a late period vocal performance to it. I'd hope so. I don't know.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. The thing about this book is that overall with Batman 89, Hamm had so many ideas. He had so many ideas, and it killed me that he did not have enough space to do it. This book could have gone for 12 issues.
Agreed.
You could have just spread it all out to 12 issues, because there's so much crammed in this, and I'm grateful for that, because I've read too many comics where whole issues can go by where basically nothing happens effectively. Maybe
That's true.
There's a fight scene, but no
Yeah.
plot progression, no ideas. It's either it's padding or it's just focusing on action, whereas this is packed to the brim with ideas. And especially in the last issue, it's so tight that Joe Quinones' art can't even breathe at times. And I mean, I'm all saying this from a point of love. I wanted more. I'd wanted this to be expanded to even more. What it really showed me was that someone could actually approach Harvey Dent as a lead character, as a character with his own arc, with multiple levels to his character, not just serving a plot purpose to be a co-crime fighter or a supporting character who goes bad and then becomes a gimmicky villain, but someone who actually has an internal life and has a character arc and is complex, and is complex as a person, and is complex as a vehicle for thematic ideas and symbolism. I mean, this plays with so much social commentary and quantum physics, and I feel weird saying, I shouldn't feel weird to still think that you could have a Two-Face solo movie in an era where we not only have the Joker, but we also have the Penguin show coming out soon.
Yeah, and there was an announcement as of this recording from Hollywood Reporter saying that there are discussions on a lot of different spin-offs for the different villain characters, some of which were not introduced yet in the Reeves verse, such as Clayface. So
and Professor Pig.
That
was in Hollywood Reporter.
I'm less excited about that one, but yes.
I'm not excited about it too much, but like the fact that it's in Hollywood Reporter, that's some real discussions being happening apparently about
I'm saying
that,
Clayface, yes. Scarecrow, that's like horror movie villain who's like even more legit. I'm down for those.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I have always believed, and I now still believe more than ever, really, that Two-Face should honestly be a solo movie character, because he's a protagonist and an anti-hero in his own right, who even in some of the best case scenarios I can imagine, he's just going to always be secondary to whatever is going on in Bruce's mind at the time. And we are not going to have enough time to really spend with him as a character with whatever ideas they want to explore with his downfall and rebirth and maybe possibly redemption, because it would be about Batman's feelings and Batman's perspective. So I would love Harvey's solo story, preferably with Bruce with Batman being the supporting character, or focusing on Gilda, or just something else. But I feel like he's strong enough, and Hamm threw so much into this. He proved it to me that the character is strong enough, especially with someone who cares and is thoughtful about the character's history and potential, to do a satisfying standalone, maybe tragedy, maybe a redemptive arc, but a full story with Two-Face as the lead. So I'd love to see that again. I all these years I don't expect it, but who knows what Warner Brothers, even with their current situation, if they're truly willing to throw everything at the wall to just crank out stories as main supporting character, the way Sony's doing with Spider-Man, where we're getting a luchador movie about a character who appeared in one issue of a Spider-Man comic written by
Bad Bunny.
Peter David. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's Peter David again.
Wait, they're making a movie about who again?
Isn't he? He looks like a luchador. I'm not
He's
sure.
a luchador. He's going to be played by Bad Bunny. I forgot the name because people are just like, why is this a movie for?
He was in one issue, but again, maybe we'll.
Meanwhile,
see
Black Cat has still not shown up in live action except for Felicia Hardy, that bullshit, and Amazing Spider-Man 2. But yeah.
They're just
state of the world these days. In the meantime, Morbius has his own movie. Let's just
and we're getting young hot Madam Web also too.
Yep, that too.
Yep. Yeah. That's happening,
dude.
Yes,
Sony is worse than WB at times, but that's another story, man.
So yeah, maybe they'll if Warner Brothers still has money to throw around at anything, then I will happily take them throwing money at, among the many spin-offs, a possible Two-Face solo project. I'd love to see it dearly. I'd be scared to see how they'd handle it because I've seen him handle it badly so many times. But let's give it a go. Let's see what they would do. I'd much rather see that than yet another version where he's just boiled down, simplified to just one or two supporting roles or being overshadowed by a villain. Just shoot the works. Let's see what happens. That's what I want to see.
There's the challenge to Warner Brothers. And with that, that is super villain stuff you should know. Big thanks to our research assistant Dan for the visuals on this. And as a quick post-credits scene, our patron Logan Wood did this mock-up of Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dr. Manhattan, as potentially considered back when Sam Hamm wrote the Watchmen script. So someone, Andrew asked for audio. If you got a good Arnold impression, give us one of Dr. Manhattan's speeches in the Arnold voice. I'd love to hear
incredible.
that. And we'll put it in the podcast.
Incredible. It is 1982 or whatever it is. Insert year. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm standing on Mars.
Yes. So, all right, on to the fan comments.
My big blue dick.
On to the fan comments regarding an episode where we covered another comic book character who has issues with abusive parents, repressed trauma, anger, duality, inspired by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the Hulk. So, Christian Garcia commented about our talking about how Bruce Banner's name was changed to David Banner in the 1970s show and the whole legend of that, and Stan Lee saying that it was because they said that the name Bruce was too gay. That quote.
It's so ridiculous. That makes me crack up every time, man. It's just so dumb.
It's dumb, yeah. Christian says the whole name thing on the TV show depends on who you ask, I guess, because Stan Lee said the reason he was given was that Bruce sounded too gay. Again, this is like 10 years after Batman 66 was a hit. Like, don't tell me you can't have somebody whose name is Bruce as the main character. Kenneth Johnson said the reason he changed it was because Bruce Banner is an alliterative name. He thought it sounded too comic booky, and he wanted to get away as far as possible from the source material. I mean, it is one of the most iconic Hulk adaptations of all time. However, it's usually a recipe for disaster when you're trying to stray away as far as possible from the source material.
Do you remember when Hasselhoff played Nick Fury?
Yeah.
I remember they said they wanted to get rid of the white temples for that because that was just too comic booky. And you look at the rest of the movie too. If you
like if really,
that was the bridge too far.
Yes. Christian says, and Universal, as far as I know, only have distribution rights. Marvel does have the production rights, but if they want to make a Hulk movie, it would have to be distributed by Universal instead of Disney. And Disney, of course, doesn't want that. As I said on the show, I don't think it's Universal who is holding up trying to make a Hulk movie. I think they know. They have the rights to it. I just don't think it's from their end that it's not happening.
They got the rights to Scar, though, baby.
Yes. Clearly. The way they work around that is using the character in other movies. Supposedly the distribution rights will revert back next year and is the same case for Namor the Submariner, as we'll see in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So, all right, next one. Okay, so we put a question out there, and we can ask this to you, John, in terms of like if people prefer the 2003 Ang Lee, Eric Bana Hulk, or do they prefer the 2008 Louis Leterrier, Edward Norton Hulk from the MCU? It looks like our fans are big fans of the Ang Lee version. John Gauthier says 2003 Hulk is still by and large my favorite theatrical version, with 4 people liking his comment here. I know that you've read a lot of the Hulk stuff, John, somewhat in relation to Two-Face, since it also deals with duality and abusive parents and stuff. Do you have your own personal favorite like Hulk movie?
Look, I have got to rewatch Incredible Hulk because I saw it in theaters. At the time was I viewed Ang Lee's Hulk with a great affection. I considered it a noble failure because he tried playing with comic book layouts and tried also bringing in some weird personal drama and psychology that didn't fit in the comics, but it was its own weird take on it, and also threw in Hulk Poodle as well.
Andrew's favorite.
And I loved.
That's the failure part. The rest of it was noble.
That's the main part you remember too. I remember you telling me.
Dude, I saw it once in the theater in 2003. I have not seen it since then. So I just
really
only
should not
remember
have
bits
included
and
those.
pieces.
Yeah,
I love the scene with Bana and Nick Nolte in just a dark prison cell together, pairing off, and someone described it as this is a literary theater reference, August Strindberg's Hulk. And I like that comparison. That it was, it was like a black box theater dramatic interaction. And then Nick Nolte literally chews the scenery. He literally takes a bite out of the scenery. I'll go.
You just watch me go.
I gotta see this again.
But then I tried rewatching it a few years later, and I just couldn't get through it. Even my affection couldn't get me through it. So it was better left in the past, honestly, because I remember I think I rewatched it back in like 2012 or so, and the MCU was in full bore, and at that point we were starting to get comic book films that felt like the comics. Yeah. And I felt it didn't hold up as well, even as something I can like on its own merits and appreciate for what it tried to do. At the time when I saw Incredible Hulk in theaters, I thought it was a much more competent, not competent, but a more solid film. Ang Lee is absolutely a competent director. No one can dispute
right.
But it was a much more solid, straightforward film, and I disliked it on those merits. But I've known plenty of people who love it and think it's underrated, and I'm well past time to give it another evaluation now that I've actually since then read a lot more Hulk comics. I was so into Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk run that I had to go back and try to read everything I could. And I'm in a much better position now to try to appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I'd like to give it another go. So that's basically where I'm at.
Gotcha. We've also been asked by one of our fans, Paul, on Twitter, saying, just listen to this on podcast. Guys, you spoke a lot about Hulk 2003, which is hardly ever referenced. If you guys do end up rewatching it, can you please do an episode/deep dive? I would love to hear more on this movie. I actually like it, and it has an Aussie lead actor. All right, well, cool. I guess the people have spoken. We got to rewatch this movie. Even though John just told us that it's better off left in the past.
No. Rewatch it. Let's tear into it. You guys tear into it. I'll totally listen to that. I'm down for that. I'd love to hear that.
I feel like I'm just going to mainly do it to dive into the Peter David novelization.
I should read that. Right, of course.
Right.
I remember loving it. Yeah.
Well, that is a man who has very strong opinions about what the Hulk should be. So I'm sure there are some tweaks that he did. I mean,
there was a lot. It just felt like, the movie is based off this book.
Yeah,
like that's what it felt like.
Oh wow. Yeah. Okay. They really give those authors like free reign, huh?
Yeah, it seems
You
like
know?
there was no editorial. They're just like, yeah, just write it, like, put stuff from the movie in it, and you can add whatever. And Peter David is like, let me proceed to write the dark and tragic backstory of Bruce and his father for like the first 50 pages of this novel, which is like maybe 5 minutes in the movie. In the opening.
Is it better than the movie? Pretty much.
Oh yeah, I remember reading it that summer afterwards, being like, "Holy shit!" Like I was just riveted. I loved it. There was so much stuff that was to it, and then whenever I watched the movie afterwards on DVD, it was like it didn't live up to it. But like if I could just inject the stuff that I remember reading in the novel, then it was like better. But that was only because I read the novel.
Are you telling me there are 50 pages of bad dad angst, and I haven't read it? My God!
eBay.
I've got to get on that.
To eBay you go.
I gotta get on that shit.
To be fair, I've not read this since 2003, so my memory could be hazy.
I'm gonna get it and I'll be eating well.
I'm ready and raring.
Woo,
I got both Peter David novelizations of both Hulk movies, and we'll dive into those, especially because like the Incredible Hulk movie was also somewhat butchered in the edit. So that's another Batman Forever type of situation. But, we'll cover that because apparently we're also going to be, we're a Batman and Hulk podcast now, it seems. So.
It's just Bruce stuff you should know.
Bruce stuff. It's true.
I felt like Ang Lee had like, from what I remember anyway, he was like good at the thematic elements, the deeper stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then the Leterrier version just had the Hulk clap, boom.
Yeah.
Like it had cool action. So like felt like maybe Turman might have the best one.
Yeah.
But outside of him, if you were combine like the deep thematic elements of Ang Lee's with Leterrier's like cool action, then now we're talking like that's a fucking Hulk movie,
Yeah, for sure.
Didn't Edward Norton do the Edward Norton thing and kind of hijack it and add his own scenes or something like that? Wasn't there some where
I think so, but it might have been like the stuff he added might have been stuff that was actually like legit. I'm trying to remember what stuff, but I've seen an extended cut of the movie that's I think was supposedly leaked by the director himself. I gotta reread on this, but
the main thing I remember from that Leterrier one is the fucking Hulk clap, dude. Like I was like, that's what I need. I need that in my life.
Well, came back in She-Hulk.
Came back in She-Hulk, yes, which people were talking about the twerking. Causing another clap.
That's true.
Anyway.
All right, well.
Be careful with great power and whatnot.
With great responsibility with your claps. All right, well, that's it for the fan comments on the Hulk stuff. Over to Andrew with the fan shout-out.
Thank you, everybody. I have this pulled up. Where the hell is it? Here we go. All right, so thank everybody for those comments. To get here up on this board that you see here in the visual, that's a $1 tier. I'm jumping ahead for some reason, but anyway, we want to thank some of our newer people, which is Darren F., Billy L., Yusuf A., Kevin R., Derek O., and Mark M., and our other supporters as well. Thank you very much. That's a $1 tier, gets you the shout out there, and then the $5 tier gets you a whole other show. This show right here you're watching is every Monday, free on YouTube and all your podcast outlets, and then this $5 tier show is on Patreon only, and it's every Friday. And it's more deep dives, and a lot of times it's like we would say the Monday show is a deep dive, but then the Friday show is a deeper dive. So if you can believe it, we've gone over the religions of Krypton and the moons,
yes.
And Wegthor, right?
We spent like maybe 15 to 20 minutes on Footlight Frenzy, the movie that's outside the theater in Batman '89 when Bruce's parents were killed, on what that was. We ended up releasing that to the main show, but still, just an idea.
The showtimes that were on the
showtimes that were on the poster,
on the marquee and everything. Yeah.
And what showing they must have seen.
If you cannot live without this content, you're gonna have to be a part of our $5 tier, and then our $10 tier gets you all of that plus a monthly meetup, which you meet up with us monthly in a Zoom-like call, and we interact. We have a conversation with the listeners, and a topic at hand as well. So there's that. So we have merch, ever dwindling merch at Redbubble and Threadless. So superhousepod.redbubble.com and superherostuff.threadless.com. Ben Man and Dee Wizards, Acula shirts, shower curtains, mugs, and all that. Artwork by Stefan Santa Cruz. Please send us some audio that Arnold Schwarzenegger.
As Dr. Manhattan.
Dr. Manhattan audio, please. It can be in the show or anything at all. Just like if you ever listen to another podcast where they're like, love the show, guys, or that last episode sucked, or, whatever. Like, send us something. In audio form. Just email it. You can use your voice recorder on your phone and just email straight away to superhousepodcast@gmail.com. I'm Thunderwolf Drew on Instagram and Twitter. Thunderwolf lives on YouTube. ThunderwolfDrew.com has my whole portfolio except for AmanoRecon.com. Donate today. It is out. It's up. Finally. 60-day campaign. The $4 minute pitch video that I've been holding back for so long. It's out, everybody. So please, it's think of it as, you'll see it in the 4-minute thing, but it's R-rated, bloody, Power Rangers meets X-Files and Stranger Things. Mix it all together. Look at this. In the poster, we have evil men in black, if you haven't noticed that. And then we have aliens, and then basically more or less Power Ranger shit, but it's R-rated and bloody. So there we go. Check it out. And this lovely poster by Zachary Jackson Brown Art.com. Gaming Gaiden has been out for a week now. That's my other podcast. So many new endeavors this year. This is a podcast that I do with Mike Torres. He was a guest on this show where we ranked Superman video games, which was painful. But anyway, this is where we interview Japanese to English translators in the video game world. So really highly niche there. And we discuss translation, Japan, Japanese culture, and video games. So there it is. Ben.
Shout out to Comic Capital on Instagram, as well as the Everything Entertainment Club on Clubhouse. You can follow us on social media, on Twitter at SuperhousePod, Instagram, Superhero Stuff Pod, TikTok, Superhero Stuff Pod, Vero, Superhero Stuff Pod. My website is benwanwriter.com, where you can read different scripts. A Gotham script called Gotham Vampire, where young Bruce faces off against the Mad Monk. Unfortunately, I could not fit Harvey Dent into that one, John, so I know you won't be reading that. But the section for elementary called The Death of Sherlock Holmes. A modern update. The Death of Sherlock Holmes is a modern update on the classic story, The Adventure of the Dying Detective. And Curb Your Enthusiasm, Disneyland, the Curb episode they could never make, where Larry David goes to Disneyland.
People out there, please read this. I want to see comments on this also.
Please do. My YouTube channel is in the description below, where you can also check out Doctor Who, the Ronin of Time, an audio drama I write, narrate, and edit with the 8th Doctor meeting Miyamoto Musashi in ancient Japan. My personal Instagram is BenJuanWriter. My son's Instagram, my cat is Alfie Pennyworth Cat on Instagram. And if you have an Alfie or a Peanut, or what's your cat's name, John?
Dipsy.
Dipsy. Oh,
Larry. But you need a whisker box.
He or she?
He's a he.
Yeah.
So if you have a Dipsy or a Peanut or an Alfie or any cat yourself, then you can get the whisker box. And we have a promo link somewhere that should get you a deal on that. And if you have a dog instead, that's cool too. We got the Bark Box. Y'all give your dog exactly what they want with the Bark Box. First month off, free, valued at $35 if you use our promo link. And that is at superherostuffpod.com/shop, where you can get all sorts of stuff, including a Keaton Batman Funko. We took off the Ezra Miller Flash, but you can get a Flash comic book for the celebration of 75 years, as well as in the Amazon affiliate link. All sorts of good shit over at superherostuffpod.com/shop. John, where can our fans find you?
You can find me on Twitter at about-faces and on Tumblr at about-faces. And very, very occasionally, if I ever get back to the old dust off the old live journal, I can be lurking on there now and then. But I probably shouldn't have mentioned that because that's very embarrassing. So just forget that I mentioned that I will occasionally still write on live journal like an old man.
I can't believe that shit's like so old at this point. I had a live journal.
Better times. No, they were different times.
Well, they do have a lot of your insights into all the different Two-Face stuff, and it is something that I had been reading before we met and before I did the show even. So definitely check those out if you're fans of John and his insights into Two-Face or the Two-Face character. So that is the About Faces live journal. And I think that'll just about do it, guys, on this one.
So flip a coin, and hopefully if it lands on heads, tell all your friends about us. There it is. So go do it, please. Thank you.
And if it lands bad heads, tell twice as many friends.
Woo!